Welcome ladies and gents, my name is Curci. Today we're going to be asking the question of just how good is Dragon Age Inquisition? To be straight, it's actually very good. Extremely good. It is an incredible video game. There are so many things built into it. It just takes the best out of everything that was really good this year and just mends it to get it to be completely awesome. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. No game is perfect, but there are a lot of things that I wish that Dragon Age Inquisition had done a better job of doing. We're going to talk about all those things right here in this video, but let's talk about the things that actually were good. For starters, let's talk about the character, because that's the first thing you do when you get into the game, is that you create your own character. You play as the Inquisitor, and what's really cool about Inquisition is just like every other Dragon Age game, it is a role-playing game. So in a way, the Inquisitor is you. But what I really liked about the character creation, while there aren't really a whole lot of options, I did like that the game gave me that freedom to pick the race that I wanted to be. It harkens all the way back to Origins. Origins allowed you to be, okay, you could be a dwarf, maybe you be royalty, something like that. Like the whole point of Origins was that you had a different origin story and then it played out later in the game. In Inquisition, you don't get that differing origin story. Everybody starts the game exactly the same, but I did like that the game allowed me to be a different race. I thought the character of the Inquisitor was really good, but it really is dependent on how you play. The way that I tackle role-playing games is that my initial run-through was always the choices that I personally would make. Sometimes they're good choices. Most of the time they're good choices. Other times I'll dip a little bit to the bad side because I feel like this is what needs to be done, but I'm doing it for the greater good. And then later run-throughs will be my totally good and totally evil choices. But what's really cool about the Inquisitor is that there is character development that is within yourself. And I like that stuff. Does Dragon Age Inquisition have really hard-hitting choices? Sometimes, not all the time. But when those hard-hitting choices come in and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, I know that the good choice is this, but I feel like I have to do this other thing. And that happened a couple of times in this game. I like that. It was good character development. My character started as this dude who really didn't know what was going on. He didn't really have any idea on his beliefs. Like, there's a big religious factor in Dragon Age, and my character really didn't believe in that stuff. But then as the game goes on, he encounters all these different things, and he's like, maybe there is like a higher power or something. It's cool because this is me playing and I'm thinking in there and I'm playing, I'm like, look, I don't believe in any deity, any god. This is what we're dealing with. We're the people in control of our own destiny. But then you see certain things and you're like, wait, is there a higher power? And I liked it because it was character development within me, which meant it translated into the Inquisitor. My Inquisitor was a really nice guy, but then as he started to grow, he became maybe a little bit more aggressive, maybe a little bit more cold. Because one of the cool things about this game is that because you are the Inquisitor, you're a guy who's going to be leading armies, who's going to be playing in the political game. One of my more favorite things in the game is actually the ball section. It actually kind of was nerve-wracking. I had to make sure that the things that I was saying was very vague, that I wasn't appealing to certain people, like I wasn't taking a side. And I imagine that politics have got to do that stuff too, where they're like, we're just here to gather information from you. We're not trying to like tell you that we're going this way or that way. We're just trying to see what's happening. We're trying to assess the situation so that when we go back and we start to think about all this stuff, we can make an intelligent decision as to what side we're going to go with. But then you also get to like judge people that have wronged you. Sometimes you'll do a side quest and then you'll encounter like a notable character and then they'll be like, all right, well, he's in prison. What do you want to do with him? Do you want to kill him? Do you want to throw him in jail and throw away the key? And I'm sitting on my throne early on and I actually am kind of merciful. I see people and I'm like, you know what? Your crime wasn't all that bad. Look, you're good. We're good. Just please don't mess with us again. As the game goes on, you see some really messed up stuff, and then you get to that judgment section, and you're like, you know what? I understand why you did it, but it's still not cool, and I need to make an example. So you're going to die. It's really cool character development. I liked it because it was the best kind of character development, the kind that's within you. So let's talk about the story of the game. There's a giant hole in the sky, basically a portal to the demon world known as the Fade. Demons are pouring out of it, and the job of the Inquisition, the whole reason why they get formed is that we're going to have to fix that hole in the sky up there. Gathering support and armies, and just like with the political game, it's like they're trying to get people to help them out. Their influence is growing. You're going into different areas and establishing camps, closing Fade Rifts, which are like portals. I spent a lot of time closing Fade Rifts. But then as the game progresses, it introduces a new threat. Like there's a looming threat of this breach, and then it establishes a really credible villain. I want to talk about the villain, but I'm not going to because they'd be spoilers. But I will say that the villain is really good. But when that villain finally gets established, when he finally comes on scene, it's really epic, and then the stakes get raised even higher. They never actually call it a war in game, but in my opinion, I felt honestly like I was at war with this guy. His army was attacking my forces, my army was attacking his forces. It felt like between the Inquisition and this bad guy, we were going at it. So I thought, personally, the story was really good. Here's one of the negatives. We're going to get into our first really big negative that it's not really a negative because it didn't really happen. I kind of just wish the game did this. Early on in the game, you get to make a decision. You go on this mission to help out these people, or you go on this mission to help out these people. When you pick one of them, the other one gets resolved. It happened early on, so I thought throughout the rest of the game, we were going to have to to make a decision where we go on this mission or we go on this mission. We establish and we gain something, but the other one gets resolved. And maybe that actually helps out the bad guy. So it's a matter of which one will make my forces stronger and which one will make his forces stronger. So where do we go from here? Which one has the biggest threat that we need to establish now that if we let this go, it's going to come back to bite us? And all of those things go through your mind when you're making that first decision of which mission do you go for. The problem being is that two mission things never happens again. After you make that decision, the game is the same for everybody. I've looked it up. You do certain things. I didn't feel like the game had alternate endings. No, it just had just the one ending. I felt like one of the big things that was a big pulling point for Mass Effect, which is another BioWare product, was that my story was going to be different than your story because you made different decisions than me. I thought Dragon Age Inquisition was going to take it to the next level where I'm picking several missions that are completely different than whatever decision that you made. And it makes perfect sense because you get these people in this town and they're like, help, we're about to get attacked. And a lot of times in games, you go do like 1,000 other missions and then you come back and the people who are still there saying, help, we're about to be attacked. I thought that Inquisition was going to do this thing where like, help, we're about to be attacked, and then you go do something else and you come back, you're like, yeah, well, we got attacked. We're dead now. Thank you. The game had done more of that decision where I did this, which meant that this got resolved, which meant that that mission was locked off to me because it's gone now, would have really played into that replayability factor. And I thought that would have been fantastic. It didn't do that though, so it's disappointing. In that same note, there's also no reputation system. No, like if I make an evil choice, this is how the world's going to react to me. I thought the reputation system would have really helped play into this whole factor because the Inquisition is starting to be established and then people are starting to see like how they are and who they are and how they should respond to them. And the reputation system could feed into that. If you would, let's just say for example, I'm judging somebody and all he did was just steal some chickens or something and I cut his head off, then I think the people would be afraid of me. They're like, we're not going to mess around with this guy. He's the guy that should be feared. Or on the other side, it's like you stole a couple of chickens. Here's a slap on the wrist, but please don't do it again. And then people will love you because you're like, oh, you're merciful. You're such a nice guy. One of the things that I really like that Mass Effect 2 and 3 did, you have the option to like lock this off completely if you don't want to do this, but if you're evil, like you can make your face look really evil. And I was hoping that would happen because when I originally made my character, I kind of made him so that he would like, if I got the excuse, I would have made him go evil. But that choice never happened because every decision that I made that was like, okay, here's the bad choice, ended up being the good choice anyway because they gave it that twist on it. Like he's a good guy either way. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. So I really didn't feel like the game gave me that freedom to tailor the way that I would play. Like how the Telltale games do it, how they're like able to walk that line of you can be good or evil. I felt like Dragon Age Inquisition set you on the line. This is how you're gonna go, and that's it. Obviously, you can make choices in the game, and there are a lot of choices that are pretty hard to make because you're not really sure which one is better. I think there were a couple of times where I sat there, just like in Far Cry 4, where I was just like, I don't know what decision I have to make, so I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna think about this, and paralyzed by indecision. That's a really good role-playing game. In the end, the story was good. I thought the choices that were there were good, and I thought the character, for the most part, was good. Just like in every BioWare game, like Mass Effect, or even other Dragon Age games, is that the connection with the characters is such a really big part of the game. As you play through the game, you're going to have a home base, a place where you get to go to, you get to talk to your companions, you get to catch your breath after each mission. You can also go to the war table and like kind of like Assassin's Creed style, where you can like send troops to certain missions, and then they'll take real time to complete, and then they'll come back with like a reward. Out in the world, you can close fade rifts, do activities, and accumulate power points. We're going to talk about the open world and the activities you can do in there in a second because it's really good. But you accumulate the power points and then you can spend that at your war table so that you can unlock other story missions, or you can actually go and unlock little objectives. This was a system that worked, but it annoyed me a little bit because it's like I have to accumulate 40 power points in order to advance the plot. That's annoying. But I really liked going back to my stronghold and communicating with my characters, connecting with them. Some of them will open up to you and tell you their life story, and it's just like, that's really touching. Like something that you've done as a kid. Like you were an asshole as a kid, but you're a good guy now. But I really liked that because BioWare games have always been really good with that. I felt each character stood out in their own way, and you fell in love with them. Either way. I touched on it, so we might as well talk about it again. Let's talk about the open world. How big this game is. Previous BioWare games have always been very linear, where it was just like, here's your set path and you're gonna go on that path. But the game really just opens up. Like it is truly an open world game. I always assumed that free roam games and open world games were very two different things, although they can be confused as the same thing. Free roam games give you the freedom to go wherever you want, but it's not gonna open the world up. Like if you see like a building in the distance, you can't jump over the border and run to it. No, free roam games give you the freedom to go wherever you want, but in this limited space. Open world games are worlds that are open to you. Games like Skyrim, games like GTA, games like Dragon Age Inquisition. You can go to the coast, you can go to the desert, you can go to the forest, and these zones are enormous. I kept using this phrase of bigger and better, and it really is bigger and better because it fills it with so much content. One of the reasons why I've never really gotten into MMOs is because they put a huge emphasis on stats and equipment and loot and side quests and things like that, extra objectives that you can do, and it was never really something I was into. Like, I never enjoyed the grindiness of it. I have played games before where I did grind and I did have a good time, and I did have a good time gathering loot and doing side quests. Dragon Age Inquisition is one of those games that made me feel good. I loved going out and doing side quests for people, closing fade rifts, exploring, tackling big enemies like dragons, and getting the big awesome loot that you would get from that. I love the leveling system, how you can like accumulate different points. Like, I want to get my character to actually heal people. It's not MMO, but it's very MMO-esque. It's good. But what I really liked about these open zones is that each one, I feel like, had its own like little subplot, like something that was separate from the main story, but it still helped tell the story. It was one of the big things that I loved about Far Cry 4 was that its open world helped tell the story. There is one section in the game, you go there and there's a fade rift off in the distance, and because of that fade rift, the dead are rising up, so these people are being attacked by the dead. So you're defending the village against the undead, and then you're like, all right, well, I gotta get over to that fade portal and close it so that these people don't get killed. But it's relevant to the plot because it's a fade rift. It's a portal to the demon world, because the borders between the real world and the demon world are shattered at this point. It is what they established in the start of the game, and it affects the main plot. It's just showing the world as it's being affected by this demon invasion. You wanna know how much time I spent in Dragon Age Inquisition? Boom! Right there. Every time I save the game, it reminds me how much time I spent in that game. Probably Titanfall has seen more hours from me, but this is really high. This is easily number 2. A game that has made me put this much time. Most of this is not even the story. Most of this is me playing the extra side quests. Dragon Age Inquisition is really good. Could it have been better? Absolutely. But I really like its wide open zones, the thing that it fills in those zones with. I really like the story, the characters that are involved, your character, the choices that you make. Mind you, I think that they could have done things maybe a little bit more differently, but it was still a really good game. It even has a multiplayer. It's very similar to the Mass Effect multiplayer. You pick a class, and then you take that into the multiplayer, you can level them up, you get additional stats and additional abilities. You'll go through different areas. You go from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E, and then finally you'll fight a boss. It's just extra content on top of an enormous amount of content. It's just really good. I think that there were certain things that the game could have done better to actually add to that replayability, but it's still very good. I actually am going to start up the game all over again to make different decisions. Play a different class, because I played this class, I've done all the things, I'm in the middle of fighting all the dragons, but I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I'm as strong as I'm gonna get. I feel like maybe if I tried a different character, maybe I could do a little bit better. You just start over and you just have as much fun as you did the first time. It's just a really good and very incredible game. It's Game of the Year, and it's Game of the Year for a reason. I didn't just call it Game of the Year because everybody else was calling it Game of the Year. I actually tried to get Shadow of Mordor to be Game of the Year just because of the fact that I was just like, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing, and everybody's calling Dragon Age Inquisition to be Game of the Year. But I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy that chose Shadow of Mordor over Dragon Age Inquisition just to be different for the sake of being different. No, I'm going to recognize that the game is good because it deserves to be recognized for that reason. So Dragon Age Inquisition, for me, my personal Game of the Year, boom. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.